The courtroom was quiet that morning. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy. The air inside the room felt tight, like everyone was holding their breath. Wooden benches were filled with people whispering softly. Some were family members. Some were reporters. Others were just curious visitors who wanted to see what would happen. At the defense table sat a young black man. His hands were shaking slightly. He tried to hide it by pressing them together. His eyes moved around the room, searching for something. Maybe hope. He looked scared. Across the room, the prosecutor sat confidently, flipping through papers. He looked relaxed, like he already knew the outcome. Some people in the audience were already judging the young man. They looked at him with doubt. Some even looked angry. They believed he was guilty, but no one had heard the full story yet. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Then the door behind the judge's bench opened. "All rise," the court officer said firmly. Everyone stood up. The judge walked in slowly. He was an older white man with gray hair and sharp eyes. His face showed authority. His steps were slow and confident. He had been a judge for many years. He was known for being strict. Some said he was fair. Others said something different. The judge sat down and looked across the room. "Be seated," he said. Chairs made small sounds as everyone sat back down. The judge began reading the case file. His face showed little emotion, but when he looked toward the defense table, he frowned slightly. He noticed something. The young man sitting there did not have a lawyer next to him. The judge raised his eyebrow. "Where is the defense counsel?" he asked. The young man swallowed nervously. Before he could answer, the large wooden doors at the back of the courtroom slowly opened again. Every head turned. A tall black man walked inside. He moved calmly. He was dressed in a clean, dark suit. Not expensive, not flashy, just neat and professional. His shoes made soft sounds against the floor as he walked toward the front. He carried a simple leather briefcase. There was something different about him. He was not nervous. He was not rushed. His face was serious but peaceful. His eyes were focused, like he had prepared for this moment his whole life. He reached the defense table and placed his briefcase down carefully. The room became silent again. The judge looked at him from above. There was a short pause. Then the judge spoke. "And you are?" he asked. The man looked up respectfully. "I am the defense counsel, Your Honor," he replied in a calm voice. The judge's expression changed. His eyes narrowed slightly. "For the defendant?" the judge asked again. "Yes, Your Honor." There was a strange look on the judge's face. It was not confusion. It was something else. Doubt, surprise, maybe even disbelief. The judge leaned back in his chair. "I was not informed that new counsel would appear today," he said coldly. The attorney opened his briefcase and calmly took out some papers. "I filed my appearance yesterday afternoon," he answered politely. The judge stared at him for a few seconds longer than necessary. Some people in the courtroom noticed the tension. The air felt even heavier now. The judge cleared his throat. "And you are prepared to proceed?" he asked, almost challenging him. "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney replied confidently. The young man sitting beside him looked at him with wide eyes. For the first time that morning, there was a small spark of hope in his face. But the judge was still studying the attorney. Something about him seemed familiar, but he could not place it. He leaned forward slightly. "Have we met before?" the judge asked. The attorney paused for just a second. Then he gave a small, controlled smile. "Yes, Your Honor," he said softly. "Many years ago." The courtroom became very still. The judge frowned. He searched his memory. He had seen thousands of faces over the years. Lawyers, defendants, families, angry people, crying people. He shook his head slightly. "I do not recall," he said shortly. "That is understandable," the attorney replied. "I was much younger then." The judge did not respond, but something had changed. There was a quiet confidence in the attorney's voice. Not disrespect, not anger, just strength. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Very well," he said. "Let us begin." As the case started, the attorney stood straight. His voice was steady. He spoke clearly. He did not rush. He did not show fear. And as he stood there, speaking in that same courtroom where he once stood as a powerless child, he remembered that day clearly. He remembered watching his father being judged unfairly. He remembered feeling small. He remembered promising himself something. One day he would come back, but not as a scared boy, as a lawyer. And today was that day. The judge still did not recognize him. But before this, 20 years earlier, the same courtroom looked much bigger. Back then, he was only 14 years old. He sat on the last wooden bench, his feet barely touching the floor. His hands were cold. He kept rubbing them together, trying to stop the shaking. He did not fully understand the law. He did not understand the long words the lawyers were using. But he understood one thing very clearly. His father was in trouble. His father stood in front of the same judge who now sat high above the courtroom again. The same sharp eyes, the same serious face, the same cold tone of voice. The charges against his father were serious. Theft, fraud, lies that spread quickly through their small neighborhood. Some people believed the rumors without asking questions. Some friends stopped visiting. Some neighbors crossed the street when they saw them. The young boy did not know who to trust anymore. He only knew his father. And his father was not a criminal. His father worked 2 jobs. He fixed cars during the day and cleaned offices at night. He came home tired but always smiling. He always said, "We may not have much, but we have honesty." That sentence stayed in the boy's heart. But in the courtroom that day, honesty did not seem enough. Their lawyer was a public defender. He looked tired. He had too many files on his desk. He spoke quickly and did not meet their eyes often. It felt like this case was just another number to him. The prosecutor spoke loudly and confidently. He painted a picture of guilt. He used big words and strong sentences. People in the courtroom nodded along. The boy felt invisible. When his father tried to explain what really happened, the judge interrupted him. "Just answer the question," the judge said sharply. The boy flinched at the sound of the judge's voice. His father's shoulders slowly lowered. He looked smaller somehow, less powerful, less heard. Important evidence was ignored. A key witness was never called. Mistakes in the report were brushed aside like dust. The boy did not understand the legal details, but he understood something deeper. The room had already decided. He watched the judge carefully. He searched for fairness in his eyes, for patience, for understanding. He found none. When the decision came, it felt like the air left his lungs. Guilty. The word echoed in his ears. His mother began to cry quietly. His father turned and looked at him one last time before being led away. There was no anger in his father's eyes, only sadness, and something else. Apology. That look broke the boy's heart. As they walked out of the courthouse that day, the world felt different. Colder, harder. Outside, reporters were waiting. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. His mother held his hand tightly and kept walking. That night, he could not sleep. He sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where his father used to sit. The house felt too quiet. He replayed the courtroom scene again and again in his mind. The judge's voice, the prosecutor's confidence, the silence when his father tried to speak. Something inside him changed that night. He did not cry loudly. He did not scream. He made a decision. If the system could hurt his family like this, he would learn how it worked. He would understand every rule, every word, every weakness. At school, some students whispered about his father. Some teachers looked at him with pity. A few treated him differently, like trouble was part of his blood. But he refused to let anger control him. Instead, he studied harder. He spent hours in the library reading books about law. At first, he did not understand much. The words were complicated. The cases were long. But slowly, the language began to make sense. He realized something powerful. The law was not just about right and wrong. It was about who knew how to use it. Years passed. His father was eventually released after new evidence proved mistakes in the investigation. But the damage had already been done. The family had suffered. Trust had been broken. The judge never apologized. Life moved on for everyone else. But not for the boy. The memory of that courtroom stayed alive inside him. It became fuel. When people doubted him, he remembered that day. When money was tight and college felt impossible, he remembered that day. When professors underestimated him, he remembered that day. Every challenge became smaller compared to the pain of watching his father being judged unfairly. And now, 20 years later, he stood in the same courtroom. Stronger, wiser, prepared. The judge sitting above him did not recognize the young boy from the last bench. But the boy remembered everything. The fear, the silence, the injustice. And as he looked up at the bench now, he did not feel small anymore. He felt ready. This time he would not sit quietly. This time he would speak. And this time someone would listen. The promise he made that night at the kitchen table did not disappear. It grew stronger every year. But promises are easy to make. Keeping them is the hard part. After his father came home, life did not suddenly become normal again. His father tried to smile, but something inside him had changed. He was quieter, slower. Sometimes he would sit alone in the living room, staring at nothing. The boy noticed everything. He understood that even when the law corrects a mistake, it does not erase the pain. Money was still tight. Bills piled up. College felt like a dream meant for other people, rich people, lucky people. But he refused to give up. In high school, he worked after classes at a grocery store. He stacked shelves, cleaned floors, carried heavy boxes. His hands were often tired, but his mind stayed focused. While other students went out on weekends, he stayed home and studied. He read about famous lawyers. He watched courtroom trials online. He practiced speaking clearly in front of a mirror. At first, his voice would shake. He would stop and start again. Stronger, he would tell himself. He joined the debate team. The first time he stood in front of the class, his heart beat so fast he thought everyone could hear it. A few students rolled their eyes. One laughed quietly, but he did not sit down. He finished his speech, and something surprising happened. He won. That small victory meant more to him than anyone knew. Teachers slowly began to notice him. One English teacher told him, "You have a strong voice. Use it." Those words stayed with him. When it was time to apply for college, he knew the biggest problem would be money. His parents did not have savings. Loans were scary. The future looked uncertain. But he applied anyway. He wrote about his father's case in his application essay. He wrote about injustice, about silence, about promises made at kitchen tables. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, a thick envelope arrived. He opened it with shaking hands. He had received a partial scholarship. It was not enough to cover everything, but it was enough to begin. College was not easy. Many students there came from wealthy families. They wore expensive clothes. They spoke confidently about vacations and private schools. Sometimes he felt out of place. Sometimes he felt invisible again. But he remembered the courtroom. He remembered his father's face. And he kept going. He studied political science first. Then he applied to law school. Getting accepted was another battle. The competition was strong. The process was long. When he finally received his law school acceptance letter, he sat quietly on his bed and stared at it. He did not shout. He did not celebrate loudly. He simply whispered, "I'm coming back." Law school was even harder. The reading was endless. The cases were complex. Professors asked difficult questions without warning. Some classmates underestimated him. One student once said, "Law is very competitive. Are you sure you're ready?" He smiled politely. "I've been ready for years," he answered calmly. There were moments when doubt tried to enter his mind. Late nights, empty bank accounts, pressure building from every side. But each time doubt appeared, he asked himself one question. Why did I start? And the answer was always the same. Because justice matters. Because voices matter. Because no child should sit in a courtroom feeling powerless. He worked internships during the summers. He observed real trials. He saw good judges and bad ones. He saw lawyers who cared deeply and others who treated cases like paperwork. He learned something important. The law is not perfect. It depends on the people who use it. During his final year, he stood in a practice courtroom for a mock trial. He argued confidently. His words were clear. His mind was sharp. Afterward, one professor pulled him aside. "You don't just argue," the professor said. "You believe." That was true. For him, this was not just a career. It was personal. The day he graduated from law school, his father was sitting in the front row. His suit was old but clean. His eyes were filled with pride. When his name was called, he walked across the stage slowly. Not because he was nervous, but because he wanted to remember every step, every sacrifice, every night of doubt, every moment of pain. He held his diploma tightly, and as he looked into the crowd, he saw his father wiping away a tear. That moment meant everything. But deep inside, he knew something else. Graduation was not the finish line. It was the beginning. Because somewhere, in a courtroom not far away, a judge still sat behind a high bench. And one day, he would stand before him again. Not as a scared boy on the last bench, but as a lawyer ready to fight. And that day was coming closer than anyone realized. The phone call came late at night. He had just returned home from his small office. His tie was loose, and his desk was still covered with unfinished files. His career was growing, but slowly. He did not take big corporate cases. He did not chase money. He chose cases that felt personal. When his phone rang, he almost ignored it. But something told him to answer. "Hello." On the other side, a woman's voice was shaking. "Sir, my son has been arrested. They say he robbed a store. He didn't do it. Everyone else refused to help us." He closed his eyes for a moment. "What is his name?" he asked calmly. She told him. He wrote it down. "And where is he now?" "In county jail. They say the evidence is strong. The public defender met us for 5 minutes and said we should accept a deal." A deal. He knew what that meant. Plead guilty. Serve time. Move on. Even if innocent. "I'll come tomorrow," he said. There was silence on the line. "Really?" she whispered. "Yes." The next day, he walked into the jail. The young man sitting across from him looked exhausted. His eyes were red. His hands were cuffed to the metal table. "I didn't do it," the young man said quickly, before he even sat down. "I know," the attorney replied quietly. The young man looked surprised. "You don't even know the case yet." The attorney leaned forward slightly. "Tell me what happened." The story was simple. The young man had been near the store that night. Someone else had run out after the robbery. The police saw him nearby and chased him instead. He had panicked and run. That made him look guilty. There were no fingerprints. No stolen money found on him. Only assumptions. The attorney felt something heavy in his chest. Felt familiar. He requested the full case file the same day. When he read it that night, his jaw tightened. There were missing camera angles. Witness statements that did not fully match. A timeline that seemed rushed. And one more detail. The case was assigned to a specific courtroom. A familiar courtroom. With a familiar judge. He stared at the file for a long time. Other lawyers had refused this case for a reason. The judge was known for being harsh. The conviction rate in his courtroom was high. Many believed arguing there was useless. "Take the deal," one lawyer had told the family. "It's safer." But safe for who? Not for the truth. The attorney closed the file slowly. He had a choice. Walk away, or walk back into the past. The next morning, he filed his appearance as defense counsel. Some colleagues questioned him. "Why take that case?" one asked. "You know who the judge is." "Yes," he answered calmly. "And you still want it?" "Yes." He did not explain further. But inside, he understood something clearly. This was not just another case. This was history repeating itself. The young man reminded him of himself. The fear, the confusion, the feeling that no one was really listening. He began preparing immediately. He visited the store personally. He walked through the streets nearby. He looked at the camera positions. He noticed blind spots the police report did not mention. He tracked down a witness the police had ignored. A delivery driver who had seen another man running in the opposite direction. He studied every small detail, every small mistake. He built the defense slowly, like building a house brick by brick. Meanwhile, the prosecutor moved confidently. He believed the case was simple. Quick trial. Easy conviction. But the defense attorney saw cracks in the story, and he planned to show them. The night before the first hearing, he sat alone in his office. The lights were dim. The city outside was quiet. He looked at the file one more time. Then he looked at an old photograph on his desk. It was a picture of him and his father years ago, both smiling, both unaware of what was coming. He touched the frame gently. "I'm ready," he whispered. The next morning, he put on his suit carefully, not to impress, but to honor the moment. As he walked toward the courthouse, he felt calm, not angry, not afraid, just focused. He was not walking in as a victim anymore. He was walking in as someone prepared, prepared to fight, prepared to speak, prepared to make sure this young man did not become another silent story. And as he stepped through the courthouse doors, he knew one thing. This case would not be easy, but neither was the road that brought him here. And this time, he would not sit on the last bench. This time, he would stand at the front. The courtroom felt different that morning. The benches were full. Word had spread that this case might not be as simple as people first thought. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they believed they already knew the ending. The judge entered with his usual serious expression. "All rise." Everyone stood. The defense attorney stood straight, calm as always. The young man beside him looked nervous, but not as hopeless as before. The trial began. The prosecutor spoke first. He walked confidently in front of the jury. His voice was strong and clear. "This is a simple case," he said. "The defendant was near the store. He ran from the police. An innocent person does not run." Some jurors nodded slightly. The defense attorney watched quietly. He did not interrupt. He wrote small notes on a yellow pad. When it was his turn, he stood slowly. "This case is not simple," he said calmly. "It is rushed, and it is incomplete." The room became quiet. He did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He simply spoke clearly. "Running does not mean guilt. Fear does not mean crime." The judge looked at him carefully. The prosecutor called the first witness, a police officer. The officer explained how he saw the young man near the store, how he chased him, how he believed he had the right suspect. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. "Officer," he said politely, "did you see my client inside the store?" "No." "Did you see him holding stolen money?" "No." "Did you recover any stolen items from him?" "No." The jurors began to shift slightly in their seats. The defense attorney continued. "You said you saw someone run from the store. Was it dark?" "Yes." "Did you clearly see that person's face?" There was a pause. "Not clearly." "So it is possible that someone else ran from that store." The prosecutor objected. "Speculation." The judge looked at the defense attorney. "Sustained," he said. The defense attorney nodded respectfully. No further questions. The next witness was the store owner. He spoke about the fear he felt that night, about the money that was taken. The defense attorney listened carefully. When it was his turn, he asked gently, "Did you identify my client as the person who robbed you?" The store owner hesitated. "No." The tension in the room slowly began to change, but the judge remained cold. He interrupted the defense more than once. "Counsel, stay focused. Counsel, move on." Each time, the attorney responded calmly. "Yes, Your Honor." Inside, memories flashed in his mind. The same tone, the same sharp interruptions. But this time, he was not a helpless boy. He was prepared. Then came the moment he had been waiting for. He called a witness the police had never presented. The delivery driver. The man walked to the stand nervously. "Sir," the defense attorney asked gently, "where were you on the night of the robbery?" "Across the street. I was unloading boxes." "Did you see anyone run from the store?" "Yes." "Was it the defendant?" The man shook his head. No, it was someone taller. Wearing a hoodie, he ran in the opposite direction. The courtroom became very quiet. The prosecutor looked surprised. "Why did you not report this earlier?" the prosecutor asked sharply. "I tried," the witness said, "but the officer told me they already had their suspect." A soft murmur spread through the room. The defense attorney did not smile. He simply let the truth settle in the air. Then he presented the store's security footage. Not the short clip shown earlier. The full recording. It revealed a shadow moving near the back door at a different time. A detail missed in the original report. He walked slowly toward the jury. "This is why rushing to judgment is dangerous," he said quietly. The judge leaned forward. The prosecutor objected again and again. But the defense attorney stayed steady. Each fact, each detail, each weakness in the case was placed carefully before the jury. By the end of the day, the confidence in the prosecutor's voice had faded. The young man at the defense table looked at his attorney with hope growing in his eyes. But the biggest moment had not yet come. As the judge prepared to end the session for the day, he looked at the defense attorney longer than usual. There was something in his eyes now. Not doubt, recognition, not fully, but almost. The defense attorney felt it too. He knew the trial was not only about evidence. It was about confronting the past. And tomorrow he would speak words that would change everything. The courtroom battle was far from over. But for the first time, the fight felt balanced. And justice was beginning to breathe. The final day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was more crowded than before. Reporters filled the back rows. People whispered quietly, waiting for something big to happen. Even the air felt different, heavy with expectation. The young man at the defense table barely slept the night before. His mother sat behind him, holding her hands together tightly. She kept praying silently. The judge entered the courtroom. "All rise." Everyone stood. When they sat down again, the judge's face looked serious as always. But there was something else now, tension. It was time for closing arguments. The prosecutor stood first. His voice was not as strong as before, but he tried to sound confident. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "do not be distracted." The defendant ran from the police. He was near the crime scene. The timing matches. Do not let emotions change the facts. He spoke for several minutes, repeating the same points. Then he sat down. The courtroom grew quiet. The defense attorney slowly stood up. He did not rush. He adjusted his suit gently and walked toward the center of the room. For a moment he said nothing. Silence filled the space. Then he began. "Fear is powerful," he said softly. "Fear makes people run. Fear makes people panic." He paused. "But fear does not make someone guilty." The jurors listened closely. He walked slowly in front of them. "This young man was near the store." "Yes." "He ran." "Yes. But we have shown you that no one saw him inside the store. No stolen money was found on him. A witness saw another man run in a different direction." He let the facts speak. This case was built on assumption, on speed, on choosing the nearest person and calling it justice. His voice grew slightly stronger. "Justice deserves more than that." The judge watched him carefully. Then the attorney stopped walking. He turned slowly toward the judge. The entire courtroom felt the shift. "Your Honor," he said respectfully, "with permission, I would like to share something personal." The prosecutor looked confused. The judge narrowed his eyes slightly. "Keep it relevant, counsel," he said. "It is," the attorney replied calmly. The judge hesitated. "Proceed." The attorney turned back toward the jury. 20 years ago," he began quietly, "I sat in this courtroom as a child." A soft murmur spread through the room. "I watched my father stand trial in this very room." The judge's face slowly stiffened. "My father was accused of a crime he did not commit. Important evidence was ignored. Witnesses were never heard. His voice did not shake. I watched him try to speak. I watched him get interrupted. I watched him get judged before all the facts were seen." The room was completely silent now. "I was 14 years old," he continued. I did not understand the law, but I understood what it felt like to be unheard. The judge shifted slightly in his chair. The attorney looked at him directly now. That judge, he said softly, was you, Your Honor. A sharp silence filled the courtroom. The prosecutor froze. The young man at the defense table stared in shock. The judge's face turned pale. I became a lawyer because of that day, the attorney continued calmly. Not out of anger, not out of hate, but because I believed the system could be better. He turned back to the jury. This case is not about the past. It is about today. It is about whether we have learned to listen carefully, to look deeper, to demand full truth. He walked back to the defense table slowly. My father's name was later cleared, but the damage was done. He placed one hand gently on the young defendant's shoulder. Let us not repeat that mistake. He looked at the jury one final time. Justice is not about speed. It is about fairness. Then he sat down. The courtroom felt frozen. No one moved. The judge cleared his throat, but no words came out at first. For the first time in many years, he looked unsure. The jury was sent out to deliberate. Minutes felt like hours. The defense attorney sat quietly beside his client. The young man whispered, "Thank you." The attorney gave him a small nod. Across the room, the judge stared at his desk. His thoughts were heavy. Memories from 20 years ago began to surface. Faces he had forgotten. Decisions made quickly. He looked older in that moment. Finally, the jury returned. Everyone stood. The judge asked for the verdict. The jury foreperson stood. We find the defendant not guilty. A gasp filled the room. The young man broke into tears. His mother cried loudly, covering her face. The defense attorney closed his eyes briefly, breathing deeply. The judge nodded slowly. Court is adjourned. The gavel hit the wood. But the story was not over. As people began to leave, the judge spoke quietly. Counsel, please remain. The attorney stopped walking. The courtroom emptied slowly. Now it was just the two of them.